Hello, hello. Would you check out this little plastic scale that I thrifted for only $1.99? Now, I thought, you know what? Rusty crusty scales are really a thing in today's crafting world. Well, maybe not so much crafting world, but in the vintage world. People love those rusty crusty vintage scales. And I thought, you know what? Let's see what we can do with this little plastic scale and make it look a little rusty crusty. So the first thing I am going to do, as always, we're going to remove that tag. We're going to clean it up. And once I get it cleaned up, I don't want to get any paint on the little screen area. So I at first taped it off with some painter's tape. And then I noticed here on the back side, it looked like I could unscrew something. So I thought maybe the top would, the little springy thing would come off, not thinking that it was working by a spring. I just thought, oh, okay, well, maybe this is what takes it off. Guys, let me tell you, this happened. Oh, crap, I broke it. I got it back together. It works. Yay. But I got to take this out. So I'm just going to leave that little plastic piece out. And I'm going to take it in the garage. I'm going to give it a coat of this paint and primer, the dark walnut. Okay, so once it is covered, I did not spray the scale part, just the bottom base part. And now I've got Farm Fresh, and I'm going to give that bottom part a complete paint job, if you will. 2 coats. I wanted a little bit of the brown still showing, but now I'm going to take some clear liquid patina. I want to seal this in for my next layer of paint. And then I've got the color Creamy in a milk paint from Sweet Pickins, and I've already got that mixed up, and I am going to apply that right over the blue. And I'm just doing light coats. Once I get that first coat on, I will go over it and dry it with my heat gun. Of course, this is plastic, so you definitely want to make sure you keep that heat gun moving. We don't want to do any melting of the plastic, but I want to see how well this is going to crackle. I'm hoping it'll be good since I've got that liquid patina down. And I think we will be just fine. So I'm going to coat that all around, and I do 2 coats, and I also add a little bit on the top there to the scale. Once it's dried down, I'm going to take a 220 grit piece of sandpaper, and I just want to sand that all down, hoping that some of that will flake off, but also hoping I can get a little bit of that blue to come through. And then I was finding it a little difficult for that 220 to remove as much of the top coat of paint as I wanted it. So I did grab I believe this is an 80 grit sandpaper, and I'm just going to go around the areas that I want a little more chipping, and that does seem to work. I tell you, when this milk paint dries down, in my opinion, unless I'm doing something differently than everybody else, I think it's a little bit rougher to sand back than, say, if you were using a clay paint. I just go over this in different spots with the different grit sandpapers until I get it to how I like it. Now I'm going to grab the dark oil wax from Sweet Pickins, and just with a soft brush, I'm going to just go in with it, and I'm going to go over the entire piece with this oil wax. Now the directions do say to let it sit for like 5 or 10 minutes and then wipe it back. I don't know. I just call me a rebel, but I didn't really see the need to. I guess if you really want it darker, then definitely let it sit. But if you want to be a rebel and see how it looks without doing so, then you can do this. If you don't have any of this oil wax, then grab whatever wax you have on hand and grunge it up. If you don't like the grungy look, then, well, I don't think you'd be watching this far anyway because of all the flaking chippy paint we've got going on. So, but anyway, when I wipe it back, I'm just going to make sure I get all that in that paint really well. You know, these scales are definitely grungy when you find them in the wild, when that metal is all rusty and just, I don't know, the rustier, the grungier, the better. I have, which you guys have probably seen in my reveal pics, and the rusty scale I have. I had actually picked that up from Unicorn Dust Designs on one of her Whatnot shows, and I'm so glad I did. I absolutely love it. I will never get rid of that piece. Love it, love it. So again, just do as much grunging, and I'm just going to have fun with this. I'm going to play around with it, and we'll see what it looks like here in just a second. And once I'm done with that step, I'm going to grab some dark decrepit dust, and especially around the edges of the corners, I am going to apply this dust with just this little soft brush I have, and I'm just going to, go around rubbing it in. My wax is still a little on the damp side, so that's probably why this dust is just really clinging onto this piece, but I just want to add some of this. Now, I do believe if I would have let that dark oil wax sit before wiping it, it would probably definitely be a little bit more grungy. So keep that in mind if you ever try this. Okay, so I've got some Mod Podge, and then I've also got some cinnamon and that dark decrepit dust. So right around the corners, I'm going to add some Mod Podge, then I'm going to go in with the dark decrepit dust, add a little cinnamon. Now, I do wish I would have added more of the cinnamon and then just rubbed that dark and decrepit over it. Because it did have more of a brown color in the buildup of rust, which is fine. I still think it looks great, but I would have preferred myself a little bit more of that cinnamon color. But you do you. And of course, I love to use cinnamon because I love the way it smells. If you don't love cinnamon, I do believe the dark and decrepit has a light dust that you can get. I don't have any of that. Or pick a different spice. Either way, once I get the final touches here, this project will be done, and you guys will have to let me know, how do you think I did? Does it look like it's a metal rusty crusty piece? Now, before I move on to project number 2, I wanted to bring to your attention that I did put this video in the playlist for the Thrift Flip Thursday. This playlist is hosted by Joanna's DIY Live and Sabrina's Craft Nanigans. They bring this playlist out every third Thursday of the month, and I love to participate it because, this is my jam, thrift flipping. Absolutely. And so you guys go and into my description box and click on the playlist, show these ladies some love, and let them know that you came over from Chris's channel, and I hope you guys enjoy. And with all that being said, let's continue with the projects. Okay, so got a recipe box right here. It is just a little silver colored recipe box. It is a recipe box size, nothing large about it. I have a larger one coming up here in a little bit. But first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this up really well. I don't use anything special for cleaning. I just use some cleaner I pick up from the Dollar Tree. Now I'm going to use the primer and sealer all-in-one from Paint Couture. I'm using the gray color. You can use any primer. If you've got a white color, use that. If you don't want to use any primer at all and you want to be a rebel, go ahead and go for it. But I am going to want my paint to stick. This surface is a little slick, and I just didn't want to take the chance of having to fight it. But once that is dried, and I only put one coat on it, I'm going to grab a crinoline. Love this color, but we're going to cover that all over. You can see I am using this sponge dauber. It is just going to prevent some brush strokes, which a lot of times I don't mind brush strokes, but I know a lot of people do. So go ahead and dab that paint on. Now I've got this sheet of decoupage paper. This is a Roycycle decoupage paper, and I believe I picked it up from Connie on her Whatnot, one of her Whatnot shows. I'll put that link right up here on the screen, or her name at least on the screen, so you can go check her out if you want some decoupage paper. But I am loving all the farm animals on this, and so I just going to figure out which section I want on each section of this recipe box, and I will crease it so I know where to cut it. And then I will just proceed to all the images. Okay, let's try that again. I will proceed with selecting all of those beautiful images. And since this image was kind of in the center, and I didn't want to cut this all a piece, I just wanted to be able to fold it back up and stash it away. I'm going to use an X-Acto knife, and I am just going to cut out where I creased that image this way. Okay, you can see I've got all 4 images cut out. Now I'm going to grab some DIY clear liquid patina. You can use any decoupage medium of your choice. This just happens to be mine for this project. And I'm going to apply that. This brush is from the DIYstruggle.com. These fan brushes are amazing, so I will have that link in my description box if you would like to go and grab you some. So I did mist my decoupage paper, and I am also, when I get that laid down, going to use this saran wrap just to kind of make sure the surface is all smooth. I do go ahead and speed up the process of drying by using my heat gun, but I don't want to burn my paper, so I keep that heat gun moving. And once I get that paper dried, and make sure it's dried, mine wasn't all the way dry, so I kind of struggled just a little bit. But I'm going to grab just a piece of sandpaper. I'm using a 220 grit, and I'm just going to go around those edges, and we're going to get all that excess paper off. Now, I just found doing this in sections was easiest for me. If you have a different method to get that done, hey, share it in the comment section. Let me know how you get it done. But with my X-Acto knife, I also will go in the areas that, like right here where the box opens, I will cut that out with that, doing it when it's dry, because working with wet paper is no fun. And then I'll just repeat all of these processes throughout the rest of the box. Now, after I have all of those sides put on, I'm going to grab that liquid patina once again, and I'm going to seal in all of that decoupage paper. Now, I'm going to grab the color Gypsy Green from DIY Paint, and I'm going to tell you, this is one of my favorite green colors. I love this color. Oh my goodness. Give me a green heart in the comment sections if you also love this color green. But I'm going to use this and just paint the very top where we have no decoupage paper. And then I also paint the very bottom. And I do apply 2 coats, drying in between with my heat gun. Now, there are some little extra details that I want to address. So with a 220 grit sandpaper at first, and then I move on to my 80 grit sandpaper right here where the little, I guess, I'm not sure what we want to call them. Maybe the little hinges, the pieces that allow this top to open that are showing. I'm trying to remove the paper from around there. And I do this lightly because I don't want to get into the paper that's actually on the recipe box. But then I'm just going to kind of go around the edges, making sure that everything is nice and smooth. And to do that, I do go ahead and grab my sanding sponge. I feel like this gives me the smoothest texture, if you will. And I'm just going to rub that along those edges. And the main purpose of this is just to kind of smooth down where that paint kind of went over on top of the decoupage paper. You know how the paint can get a little thick. So we're just smoothing it down, and then we're going to smooth that all along the top section, just getting that paint as smooth as we can. And of course, you always want to make sure you wipe off that dust. And once I get that top section done, I will flip it on over and I'll do the same exact thing to the bottom. And once I'm happy with that, I will seal this paint in with some clear liquid patina. Now I contemplated on just leaving the top like it is or adding something. And you know, I want people to know this is a recipe box because that's exactly what it is. But I'm going to grab my little Apothecary stamp labels from IOD, and I'm going to spell out recipe on the top. And then with a stamp mount, I'm just going to pick those letters up. And I guess I spelled recipes, not recipe. And I'm just making sure those are straight by using the grid lines that are on this stamp mount. I did cut mine down into sections, usable sections for myself. They come in a pretty big sheet if you were to ever purchase one. But you can also use those little hard mounting stamps or stamp mounts. I don't know what they're called, but you guys know what I'm trying to say, I'm sure. But I use black IOD permanent ink, and we're just going to stamp that right in. And then I'll grab that E once again and fill in that space and then let this dry. I do dry it down with my heat gun. Once this ink is dried, it is permanent. It's going nowhere. Okay, so I am going to grab that cinnamon and that dark decrepit dust once again. And this time I'm just going to kind of mix it up and put it in this little container. And I'm going to grab my Mod Podge. And I just want to give this that faux rust in areas, especially along the edges, along the corners. And I'm just going to repeat that process of rusting it up. And then I'm also going to grab some brown wax and I'm going to apply that into just different areas where I can get some more grunginess, some more aging. And I mean, I'll go back and forth with the brush to try to blend it in. I'll use my finger, you know, just whatever works. But just adding that extra touch of age throughout. Sometimes I'll take and put that wax on with one brush, rubbing it in with a clean brush. And like I said, I don't want any harsh lines. I just kind of want that blended in. And then I was like, you know what, this ain't working. So I'm going to wipe it away with a baby wipe. So see, if you make a mistake, you can easily wipe that away because we have that sealer on top of that paint. But I just play around with this until I get that look that I am going for. And once I get that to my likings, this piece will be complete. I'm really leaning towards keeping this piece for myself instead of selling it on Whatnot. But you guys will have to let me know, what do you think about project number 2? Okay, so I got these tins that nobody wanted to buy, so I want to paint them up and make them look hopefully
more sellable. But I'm going to use this satin paint by Rust-Oleum, then the 2X paint and primer, dark walnut.
And once those are dry, we're back in the craft room. I'm just going to grab some Vaseline and I'm going to rub it around the inside of the lid, around the rim. So when I put this lid back on, it just goes on smoother. It'll come off smoother. And I have got the creamy color in the milk paint. Once again, I'm going to apply this color all around the outside of the tin, including the lid. I will go ahead and paint this while that lid is on. And I do end up doing about 3 coats, drying with my heat gun in between. Okay, and once that paint's dried, I am just going to distress this, and I just bounce back and forth with 220 grit sandpaper, the sanding sponge, and a wet wipe, and also a 80 grit. Just whatever gets the job done and the look that I'm going for. Okay, so I have printed these images on some mulberry paper. I had purchased them from an Etsy shop. I'll link that shop in the description box, just in case if you're interested. And these are the 2 labels right here that I'm going to be using. And I just printed these out with a regular inkjet printer. I did forget one step, and you should really, if you're printing with an inkjet printer, you should really spray those down with some type of sealer. I did not do that step, but it's okay. It ends up kind of working out anyway, but I highly recommend, if you don't want that ink to smudge, then seal it in with a couple of coats of a sealer spray. Now I'm just going to figure out where I want these labels. I'm going to want one on each side of this can. And then I thought, you know what? Let me do something here. I'm going to grab a lighter. I'm going to grab some water and a towel. And I'm going to burn the edges. I want those edges to look really distressed. I mean, this was not my idea. I actually saw somebody do this here on YouTube. Maybe a little different than I am. I don't know. But anyway, it sparked the idea of, it's like, well, you know what? Why not? If you're going to try to replicate something that is old, worn, and vintage, you know that paper is going to be all tattered. Well, let's try to recreate that look. And this lighter works very well. Of course, you know, you want to be very careful. This project is definitely not for kids under the age of 18. Okay with that. So definitely take your precautions. But I like the way it looked. So I am just going to use some decoupage medium. Looks like I'm using Mod Podge on this one. And I'm just going to apply that Mod Podge to the back of this paper. And you can see right there in the paper where it's got that little wet spot. Yeah, that is the ink had actually smeared a little bit. So definitely seal this paper before you work with it. I will use just a crumbled up piece of plastic wrap or cling wrap and push all those wrinkles out. And oh, I love the way that looks. So now I'm just going to repeat this process and apply that next one on the back side. And once those are both attached, now I didn't get them perfectly lined up. I'm going to keep this can, I believe, for myself because the labels definitely aren't in the spot that I wanted them. I didn't pay attention, but I'm going to seal these in with a good coverage of the Mod Podge before we move on to the next step. Now I'm going to grab that Sweet Pickins oil wax, and just put this on. I'm trying to get it really into the cracks from that milk paint. This is probably where I should have let this oil wax sit for about 5 minutes and then wipe it back, but I didn't. I will the next time I make one of these cans and see how that goes. But I'm just going to apply that wax, rub it in, just get it all over, and this is also going to seal in that milk paint everywhere. And once I complete this step, this project will be complete. You guys will have to let me know how I did on my first time ever trying to replicate that campfire marshmallow tin. I know this isn't the original campfire marshmallow label, but I love it because it had the little hens and chickens in there. So let me know what you think. Okay, so this is the larger recipe box that I had mentioned earlier on in this video. This has been sitting in my stash. I have not been wanting to do anything with it. It's kind of like that toolbox I made over because I love the color. This green is beautiful. That toolbox, that blue was beautiful. But you know what? Not everybody is going to like that look. I'm just thinking, you know what? I bought this piece to upcycle, so that's what I'm going to do. And we're just going to clean it up very well. And I am using that creamy milk paint. Once again, I love this color. This was a sample size. And if you guys watch my videos every week, you've seen how many times I've used this color. I do still have some left, but I don't want to run out. So I am getting me a pint size of this. Just waiting for it to come in because I love this color. This is perfection. But we are going to apply this paint all over. Same process as always. Drying in between with the heat gun and applying probably about 2 to 3 coats, just depending on how thick your mixture is. And I did get some absolutely beautiful cracking. I did 3 coats on this one. It's perfect. Oh my goodness. But I do want to take a wet wipe and I'm going to go around the inside where that lid opens up. Sometimes paint can kind of drip up under there. So I'm just going to make sure I clean that up very well. Next step is going to be to grab some sandpaper. I'm going to sand that down smoothly. Whatever flakes off, whatever doesn't. I will be happy either way. Okay, so I decided I wanted to try this Fern Fables IOD transfer book. This is from their summer collection of 2026. I don't know about y'all, but I'm loving all of the colors in this book. I think it's absolutely beautiful, but I want to use this sheet right here. I just think the way that the florals are laid out on this page is just beautiful, and I'm going to trim off a few pieces that may have been going up a little too tall, but I can always piece those back in after I rub this section on. But I just want to get an idea of where to trim, where to fold. That way everything is going to work out to my benefit. You do you, whatever helps you get the job done easy and smoothly. That's how you want to do it, but this is how I'm doing it. All right, so once I figure all that out, I've got it kind of folded. I like to kind of take the bottom of the carrier sheet and kind of fold it under. That way I can put that transfer sheet down because it is a little sticky and it sticks down, and then I can pull off the rest of that backing sheet or carrier sheet, and it's going to be right where I have lined it up. And then I'm going to take one of these sticks that are supplied in every IOD transfer booklet and just rub, lifting up on that carrier sheet as we go. And once we have that sheet completely pulled up, we want to go over it and burnish over the top of our image lightly, just making sure it is all stuck down. And then I just rub my X-Acto knife through the opening. That way we can open that box, smoothing all those transfer sheets down and underneath. And then those pieces that I had clipped off, but I knew I wanted to attach them somewhere, I'm just going to pick a spot and rub those right over those transfers we just put down. I'm going to pick out some more images and apply through the remaining sides of this box. Now I've got a crackly paint, so I don't want these images like they're brand new. So I'm going to grab the sanding sponges I use and just go over them, just kind of fading them out a little bit. It's just going to me, look a little bit more natural. Then hey, I upcycled this, made it look crackly, and then we put new images on. But you know, you do you. And then I'm going to seal it all in with some clear liquid patina. Now I do want to grunge this up a little bit, and I'm just going to take this aging wax that I concocted with some clear wax and some elephant chalk paint, mix it all up, and that's what I'm going to use to age this piece. And I'm just going to apply that over so it can sink down into those cracks, and I'm just going to go over the entire piece. And once I do this, this project will be complete. And you guys, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I really truly appreciate it. And make sure you go and check out the playlist in my description box. And as always, let me know in the comment section which of these 4 projects was your favorite. I'm really liking that smaller, the farm animal recipe box, but I don't know. I really am liking all of them. So I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the week, and I hope to see you again next week. And stay tuned to the very end. I will also have all of these projects revealed once again together, and I will see you guys soon. Bye-bye.